Whom the Gods Fear, by J. Wdowski. Chapter 26. 2 hours later Glenn was summoned onto the bridge. Granite and Mahan met him on the way. "Did they find the shuttles?" asked Granite. "It seems they found something," responded Glenn. "You never told me what the Venture's cargo was." "I didn't," Glenn acknowledged as he opened the hatch to the bridge with a touch of a button beside it. They entered the bridge. "We found them," stated Rubel as soon as they stepped aboard the bridge. "Where are they?" asked Glenn, looking at a superimposed grid map over the real-time image of the moon. 2 different blinking red dots were illustrated on the world, one in the northern hemisphere, one in the southern. There are 2 more locations on the far side of the moon, also one in the northern and one in the southern hemispheres. They are all within the largest cities in those regions, surrounded by massive croplands. We have discovered other cities and towns on the surface, but only those 4 locations are circled by large sectors of cultivated lands. Each of the cities has at least one of what we believe to be, according to their mass, the freight shuttles. One site seems to also have the 2 runabouts. That is the city in the northern hemisphere we are observing now. "Could you get any visual confirmation of the shuttles?" asked Glenn. "No, Mr. Yeager. They are within large shelters on the outskirts of the cities, the freight shuttles at least. The 2 we think are the smaller runabouts are located in the center of that northern city. They are also housed, so we cannot get a visual confirmation. They are the only readings of high concentrations of hafnium carbide on the moon's surface," answered Captain Rubel. "My guess is Demi is in that northern city with the additional runabouts." Glenn responded, "Seems like the best place to start." Rubel answered, "Have you tried communicating with the surface?" asked Granite. The communications officer answered, "We have, Commander, but have only received static. There are no radio transmissions from the moon." A world near Earth size with a breathable atmosphere, water, and growing crops, hard to think of it as a moon. Glenn thought out loud, "It seems the only way we will know for sure is to go down to the surface. We could send probes with attachments of spy drones." Captain Mahan recommended, "We have spy fly drones that could penetrate the buildings that seem to be housing the freight shuttles and the runabouts. The locals shouldn't even notice them." "Is not such a bad idea, Mr. Yeager. We could also gather intelligence on this new alien species. Our going down to their surface would be a first contact event. That is, if Captain Demi and his crew are not already down there." Glenn felt the crunch of time they were under. They had already lost 2 days just to arrive in the Smith system, and another day spent for the orbital surveillance of this alien world. Yet he understood what Mahan and Granite were suggesting would be prudent. It is best they could first learn as much as they could about these aliens before making actual contact with them. "Okay, send probes with your fly spy drones to each location we think the shuttles are. I would like to have Hogan, Dr. Longo, and Dr. Verne to review whatever intel your fly drones can gather. How much time will you need?" "We will need to launch a small network of global positioning satellites to assist the probes and the drones to navigate the surface. The GPS network will also give us much better command and control. I think we can confirm that those are the Venture shuttles and runabouts within the next 12 hours. Captain Mahan answered, "I would think at least 48 hours to gather additional intelligence on the locals. I will expect a full report then in 72 hours. Glenn said, "But let me know ASAP once it is confirmed that those are the Venture shuttles." "Aye, Mr. Yeager, I'll get right on it." Mahan saluted and left the bridge already on his 4-armcom, giving commands to his tech officers. Within 10 hours Mahan's spy fly drones confirmed that the readings of the hafnium carbide were the shuttles from the Venture. It appeared though they had been gutted. The spy drones though were unable to gain access to where the runabouts were being housed. The remaining spy drones became flies on the walls of the alien cities, transmitting audio, visual, and chemical intelligence back to the probes hovering high above the cities, which in turn relayed the intelligence data back to the Polo through the satellite network they had placed in orbit. "So what do we know?" Glenn asked the group in the conference room 72 hours after they had first seeded the 4 cities with the spy fly drones. "Their atmosphere is very Earth-like, 77.09% nitrogen, 21.05% oxygen, 1.01% argon, 0.04% CO2, and the remaining trace elements. Their CO2 level is a bit higher than Earth's, but so are their oxygen levels. Dr. Morningsun answered. As we did expect, there is less water vapor in their atmosphere. Temperatures are not that different, though, than Earth's. It actually reminds me of Southern California, climate and landscape. Is dry, but not desert dry. We would need much more data to know what their mean temperature is and any understanding of their seasonal changes. The world, in spite of it being so near a gas giant, seems very stable tectonically. We are assuming that is because they do not have tectonic plates as back on Earth. We have not been able to pick up any fault lines. Their core seems inert. That would mean they do not have a magnetic field, questioned Glenn, making them accessible to high radiation from their sun. Yes, Mr. Yeager, it should. They are, though, protected from their sun's radiation from the massive magnetic field generated by the gas giant they are orbiting, explained Dr. Verne. That means the gas giant has a spinning iron core. We are not sure. All we do know is that the gas giant is generating a magnetic field large enough to encompass all but its outermost orbiting moons, answered Dr. Verne, seemingly excited. I would strongly recommend the EGG send, at a future date, a research ship just to study this phenomenon. This whole planetary system warrants a fleet of research ships. Dr. Morningsun seemed as thrilled as Dr. Verne. There is actually much less solar radiation on their world than back on Earth. It explains why their skin is so white. And Hogan pointed out, bringing up a miniature image of one of the aliens above the conference room table. The creature was lean and handsome even by human standards. They are alien, yet humanoids, bipedal, 2 arms. Their hands, though, are very different than human hands. They have 2 opposing thumbs on each side of their hands. And Hogan zoomed in on the image of the tall, ivory-skinned being's hand. It seems this has affected their mathematical system. How so? Asked Commander Granite. We use a decimal system, using 10 positional notations. They are using a duodecimal numerical system, meaning they have 12 positional notations, not 10. Is actually a superior system to our own. For example, it is much easier to divide 12 evenly than it is to divide 10, explained Dr. Verne. With a decimal system, you can have 2 even groups of 5, or 5 even groups of 2. With the duodecimal system, you can have 3 even groups of 4 for even groups of 3, 2 even groups of 6, 6 even groups of 2. Captain Ruble cut off Dr. Verne, not wanting the meeting to turn into a math lesson. Interesting, Doctor. He turned to and Hogan. Is there anything else we have learned about them? They seem to be homogeneous. We have only detected one race in all 4 cities on the 4 corners of their world. Unless these Porcelain Elves are the only allowed inhabitants of their cities. Porcelain Elves? Asked Glenn. It is our nickname for them. Their males are a head taller than human males, about 195 centimeters on average. Their females, surprisingly, are not very tall, on average only 160 centimeters in height. We have also noticed a very large ratio of females to males, at least 10 to 1. Sounds like my kind of port of call. Captain Mahan smiled. Perhaps, Captain. And continued, they are also very lean, with blonde heads of long hair and large almond-shaped light blue eyes. And zoomed in on the ear of the being, if you note. Their ears are a little bit higher on their heads than ours, and are pointed much like elves of mythology. Due to their very white complexions and elfish features, we came up with the nickname Porcelain Elves. Ghosts would also be a suitable nickname for them. Ruble suggested. They look more like 19th century China dolls to me. What of their language? Glenn inquired. One of Mahan's linguistic officers, Specialist Stovall, answered. They clearly have a spoken language. We are running it through our computers now to try to generate translation software. We would need at least another fortnight to really nail it down. I have been able to establish some key phrases from the data. Hello, how are you? Goodbye, good, bad, are you hungry? How much is this? For example. Glenn was pleased with his progress. For only 3 days of observations, that is extremely good, Specialist. Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Keep on it. Aye, sir. And continued, zooming out to 2 different figures of the Porcelain Elves. They are warm-blooded. They have distinctive male and female sexes, as you can see here. Their females, if I may be so bold and unscientific to say, are extremely sexy. Their facial features are exceptionally feminine, and their figures quite shapely and appealing. Mahan's smile widened. Classic hourglass frame. Is like a world of Rebecca Stearns. Captain Ruble noted. White chocolate versions of Rebecca Stern, added Captain Mahan. The men chuckled. Yes, well, all of us cannot be as pleasing as Ambassador Stern. And seemed a bit jealous. You are pleasing and attractive in much deeper and more soulful ways, Dr. Hogan. Thank you, Mr. Yeager. I agree with Mr. Yeager. Thank you too, Commander Granite. And let herself for a moment smile, being touched by their compliments. She quickly refocused on her presentation. As for the males, even though they are tall, they look more like boys than men. They have no signs of any facial or body hair. I find them lacking much maturity in their appearances. As a teenage girl, I would have found them to be extremely cute and dreamy, with Prince Charming smiles. They're having 6 fingers on each hand, wouldn't that freak you out as a teenage girl? Captain Mahan stated. Dr. Morningsun answered, I think I would be curious what they could do with their 6 fingers. And nervously laughed because she was thinking the exact same thing. And took a deep breath to regain her professionalism and continued, they are bifocal. And zoomed in on a face of one of the aliens. With the forward eyes of predators, they are omnivorous with incisors and molars. She switched the view of the head to an X-ray image showing the teeth and jawbone. She then switched the image back to normal light spectrum. We had also noted in their markets they are offering meats, breads, and plant produce. How advanced are they exactly? Glenn asked. They seem able to manufacture steel. We have found blacksmiths in the cities, bakeries, leather shops, silver and gold smiths. What we believe to be herbal medicine markets, and they ride 4-legged horse-like animals for transportation. They use them and another ox-like animal for pulling carts, carriages, and wagons. Their populations are small. The largest city is estimated to be only a little more than 200,000. They are most definitely a pre-industrial society. I would guess on par with early Renaissance Europe. They do have a written language, printing universities, glass works, fine porcelain, domesticated animals, large windmills to grind grain into flour, and finely woven fabrics. Oddly, we have not noticed weapons of any sort in their cities. They do not even seem to have a police force, replied Dr. Verne. No crime? No armies? Sounds like we finally found Ambassador Stern's peace-loving people, mentioned Granite. Besides the gutted Shuttles, any sign of Demi or any of his crew? Glenn questioned. No, Mr. Yeager, responded Captain Mahan. There is one other very important fact, injected in Hogan. Which is? Glenn asked. The crops surrounding their cities, they seem to be of the same plant species I had noted in the Hawkins logs found on Shing 4. I had Captain Mahan direct a few of his fly drones outside the city to their agricultural areas. The DNA tests they have conducted have proven the plant species is identical to one found on Shing 4. These worlds are over 10 light years apart. It is not possible they would have identical plant species. Actually, it would be. Glenn answered. I do not see how. Responded Anne. The Shingese do not have interstellar travel. These people do not even have flight yet.